The knock came sharp against the wooden door, cutting through the quiet I built my evenings around. Outside, the wind carried the dry scent of sagebrush from the hills, but inside, my small kitchen held only the faint hum of the fridge and the weight of another solitary night. I wasn't expecting anyone. Didn't want anyone, really. My life here on the edge of town suited me. Sparse, controlled, walls up high like the fences I'd mended that afternoon. I opened the door to her. Tall, with dust still clinging to her boots from the gravel road, she stood there holding an empty mason jar, her dark hair pulled back loose. "Evening," she said, voice steady as the ridgeline at dusk. "I'm your new neighbor, just down the way. Mind if I borrow some olive oil? My pantry's bare after the move." My hand tightened on the knob. Borrow olive oil? In this town where folks kept to themselves? But rumors swirled lately about the housing crunch. Folks doubling up, strangers forced clothes in these empty stretches. I nodded, stepping aside. "Come in, it's in the cupboard." She crossed the threshold and the air shifted, thicker now, like the moment before a storm breaks. That evening, I moved through my routine like always. The house sat low and square on a half-acre plot, its walls thin enough to hear the coyotes yowl at night, but solid in their solitude. I'd chosen this place years back for the quiet, the way the mornings unfolded slow, with coffee brewed black and strong, then out to the porch to watch the sun pull shadows long across the yard. No neighbors close enough to wave, no voices to answer. Just me, tending the small garden out back, weeding rows of carrots and herbs that never asked for more than I gave. It kept the past at bay, that guarded rhythm. I'd learned early, after the hurt of small-town eyes turning sharp, to build my days around silence. Desires stayed buried, like seeds too deep to sprout. But the town was changing. Whispers at the feed store spoke of it. Rents spiking, families cramming into trailers, outsiders arriving with nowhere to land. Housing scarcity, they called it, though out here, it felt more like the land squeezing back. Folks who'd lived miles apart now shared driveways, fences butting up without warning. I'd seen the for sale signs yanked down, heard of evictions over late payments. It made the isolation feel fragile, like dust on a windowsill. She followed me to the kitchen, her steps measured on the worn linoleum. The space was tight, counter against one wall, a table for two shoved in the corner, the stove where I'd cooked alone for months. She set the jar down, leaning against the edge, her presence filling the room like heat from a banked fire. Up close, she had lines around her eyes from squinting into sun, hands calloused in a way that spoke of work, not idleness. "Name's Lena," she said, glancing around. "Just moved into the old Ramirez place. Landlord's breathing down necks about payments. Whole town's tight these days." I pulled the olive oil from the shelf, the bottle cool in my palm. Our arms brushed as I handed it over, a quick graze that sent a jolt through me, unbidden. I stepped back, busying myself with wiping the counter. Vulnerability wasn't my way. The heart I'd guarded since leaving the city, since the whispers that followed a too-close friendship back home, it stayed locked. But here she was, bold in her ask, casual in her stand. "Pour what you need," I muttered, turning to the sink. She filled the jar slow, the glug of oil steady. Then her eyes met mine over the rim, unflinching, like she saw the cracks I hid. "Appreciate it. Roads are muddy after that last rain. Didn't want to risk driving back empty-handed." A pause, her gaze lingering. Was it the way she tilted her head, or the soft curve of her mouth? Something in it pulled, subtle as a glance held too long in a room full of straight-back chairs. We stood there, the jar between us, and the polite exchange stretched. I should have nodded her out, but the wind picked up outside, rattling the panes. "Storm's coming," she said, not moving. "Heard on the radio. You got room for one more cup of that coffee?" My pulse thudded, betraying the calm I clutched. The kitchen felt smaller, the air between us thick with unspoken. I poured 2 mugs, black, and we sat at the table. Conversation lingered, easy at first. Town talk, the crunch of boots on gravel pads. But under it, her knee bumped mine under the wood. accidental or not. I didn't pull away. She leaned back in the chair, mug cradled in both hands, steam curling up like the first wisps from a cooling earth after rain. The move was hasty, she said, eyes on the window where the sky bruised darker. Lost my lease in the city, too many folks chasing the same roofs. Ended up here, scraping by on the Ramirez place. Landlord's got a short fuse these days, with everyone short on rent. I nodded, stirring my coffee slow, the spoon clinking against porcelain. The housing crunch hit close. I'd heard it in the diner lines, seen trucks piled with boxes heading out. But sharing my own corners felt like loosening a gate I kept latched. I keep to myself mostly, I said finally, voice low. Garden in the mornings, mend fences when the wind tears them. Nights like this, just the quiet. My routines were my armor, solitude that wrapped tight, no room for the old aches to slip in. The stove hissed then, a pot I'd set earlier bubbling over with water for nothing in particular. I stood to tend it, and she rose too, close in the narrow space. Our arms brushed again, firmer this time, skin warm through the thin sleeve of her shirt. I felt it in my chest, a pull like gravity shifting underfoot, but I masked it with a glance at the clock. Storm's building, I said, turning off the burner. You should head back before it hits. She didn't move, just watched the steam rise, her shoulder inches from mine. Maybe, but the roads flood quick out here. Her voice carried a thread of something softer, concern wrapped around the words like vines on a post. I caught her gaze then, unflinching, those eyes holding mine without apology. They pierced clean through the walls I'd stacked high, years of keeping desires tucked away, out of sight in this town where eyes lingered too long on anything different. My breath caught, the air thick between us, scented with coffee and the faint earthiness of her skin. I turned to rinse the spoon, but my hand slipped, knocking the olive oil bottle. It tipped, spilling a slick puddle across the counter, gleaming under the bare bulb. Damn, I muttered, grabbing a rag. She laughed, a low sound like gravel under tires, and stepped in to help, her fingers overlapping mine on the cloth. Slippery stuff, that oil, like trying to hold on to plans in this wind. Dry humor, the kind that cuts the tension without shattering it. We wiped it up together, elbows bumping, and I felt the heat rise in my face. Not from the spill, but from the nearness, the way her touch lingered a beat too long. The wind howled outside, rattling the door like it wanted in. She straightened, rag in hand, and looked at me square. Radio said it's a bad one. Power might go. You mind if I wait it out? Just till it passes? Her words hung there, simple as the ask for oil, but weighted now with the storm and the squeeze of empty houses in town. I hesitated, pulse thudding steady as a distant thunder. The kitchen felt smaller, the world outside pressing close. Stay, I said, the words slipping out before I could latch it back. Couch is yours if it sticks. We settled back at the table, talk turning to the crunch again. Folks bunking up, fences shared without asking. But under it, her knee found mine once more, and I let it stay. The storm hit hard that night, rain lashing the roof like fists on tin. Wind whipped through the eaves, shaking the house as if testing its bones. Lena glanced out the window, her face shadowed by the flicker of lightning. Looks like it's settling in, she said, setting her mug down. The housing talk we'd skirted earlier hung heavier now. Folks out there with no place dry, no walls to lean on. I'd heard stories at the co-op. Families splitting shifts in single rooms, evictions piling up like storm debris. It echoed in my chest, that squeeze of scarcity, making the offer of my couch feel less like choice and more like the land's own demand. I nodded, standing to pull extra blankets from the hall closet. The living room was spare, a sagging couch against one wall, a rocker by the hearth, the space tight enough that every step echoed our nearness. No fire tonight. The chill seeped through cracks I'd never bothered sealing. Take the couch, I said, unfolding the quilts. I'll grab pillows. My voice stayed even, but inside the decision tugged like a loose fence wire. Inviting her to stay cracked the solitude I'd nailed shut, letting in drafts of what-ifs. She helped spread the blankets, our hands brushing over the fabric, rough wool warmed by her touch. The room shrank around us, the low ceiling pressing down, walls close as a corral at dusk. I could smell the rain on her clothes, mixed with the faint soap of her skin. "Thanks," she murmured, sitting on the edge. "Didn't plan on this. But out here, plans bend easy." Her eyes met mine again, steady in the dim lamplight, and I felt my pulse thud against my ribs, betraying the calm I wore like old denim. We dimmed the light, the house settling into groans under the gale. I retreated to my room, door ajar just enough to hear the storm's roar, but sleep dodged me. The walls between us felt thin, voices carrying like whispers across a field. Half an hour passed before hers drifted in, soft against the downpour. "You awake?" A pause, then the creak of the couch as she shifted. I lay still, but curiosity pulled me up, padding back to the doorway in sock feet. "Yeah," I said, leaning against the frame. The living room glowed faint from a streetlight filtering through rain-streaked glass. She sat up, blanket pooled around her waist, knees drawn close in the confines. "Can't sleep in this racket?" Town gossip filled the air then, easy words at first. Old Mrs. Hale's prying eyes at the post office, the way whispers spread faster than fire through dry grass. But it turned deeper, to hidden lives. "Folks here keep secrets close," she said, voice low. "Like mine. Left the city to breathe, but the weight follows. You know that look, the one that sizes you up, wondering." I sank onto the arm of the rocker, the space between us charged like the air before thunder. My heart thudded steady, a drum in the quiet, body alive with the nearness I couldn't ignore. Queer invisibility out here meant survival. Glances coded in shared chores, touches veiled as accidents. But her words peeled it back, exposing the raw edge. "I've learned to fade," I admitted, the confession slipping like rain down the pane. "Kept my own buried, safer that way." The storm mirrored it, wild outside our fragile walls. She reached for an extra pillow I'd left, adjusting it slow, and her hand lingered on the blanket's edge, fingers grazing my knee where it hung close. Warmth spread from the touch, unhurried, like sun breaking through clouds. I didn't move, breath caught in the thickness. Was this safe? In a town where eyes caught everything, where scarcity forced us cheek to jowl, could nearness like this stay hidden, or would it bloom too bright? Her gaze held mine, unflinching, and the question hung unanswered, pulling me toward the edge. The night stretched, whispers fading into the rain's rhythm. When I finally slipped back to bed, her presence lingered in the house like the storm's echo, unresolved, tugging at the quiet I'd claimed as mine. Morning light crept in slow, gray, through the curtains, revealing her still on the couch, eyes open and waiting. Sunlight slanted through the kitchen window, pulling me from the haze of half-sleep. Lena was already up, folding the blankets neat on the couch, her movements quiet against the settling storms drip from the eaves. Coffee brewed itself in the pot, the rich scent cutting the damp air. "Morning," she said, turning with a nod, her hair tousled from the night. No awkwardness hung there, just the practical pull of the day ahead. I poured us mugs, black and steaming, and we stepped out to the yard, the ground soft underfoot from the rain. Chores started simple, the way they do out here. Resilience built into every task, like mending what the wind breaks. We tackled the garden first, my rows of carrots muddied but standing. She knelt beside me, pulling weeds with steady hands, dirt caking her nails. "This place holds up," she said, glancing at the house. "Mine's a wreck. Leaky roof, landlord circling like a hawk." The housing talk deepened then, her words edged with the scare of it all. Eviction notices had hit her building last week, she admitted, the crunch forcing her out with boxes half-packed. Stakes rose sharp in my chest. Out here, losing ground meant starting over in a town with no give. No spare rooms for the displaced. We moved to the fence line next, the wire sagging where Gus had tugged it loose. Hammers and pliers in hand, we worked side by side, the rhythm of it thawing something frozen inside me. Mucking emotional stalls, that's what it felt like. Shoveling out the old guards I'd piled high, layer by layer under the sun's climb. Her shoulder bumped mine as we stretched the wire taut, a coded signal in the press of it, warm and deliberate. I felt the need grow, pulling against the fear of exposure, like roots straining through cracked soil. What if eyes from the road caught us too close? Pieced together the glances, the shared sweat. But her hand steadied the post, fingers overlapping mine on the nail, and I leaned into it, the clash quieting for a breath. By noon, the fence stood firm, but my attempt to set boundaries faltered. "You should head back soon," I said, wiping sweat from my brow as we stowed the tools. "Your place waits." She straightened, eyes meeting mine unflinching, the air between us humming like a live wire. "Not if the landlord shows. Mind if I stick for lunch? Owe you after last night." The words hooked simple, but they tugged at the solitude I'd claimed. I nodded, leading her inside, the door clicking shut behind us. We shared the meal at the table, bread from the pantry, cheese sliced thick, the kind of food that fills without fanfare. Talk skirted the edges of it all, her eviction scare lingering like dust in the light. My fear clashed harder now, the growing need a weight in my limbs. But the failed boundary left us closer, plates cleared together in the sink. Afternoon faded into evening, chores done, and we sat on the porch as shadows lengthened. Silence thickened there, heavy with unspoken desire, the ridges turning gold in the distance. Her knee rested near mine on the step, and I didn't shift away. Dusk settled heavy on the porch, the air cooling as the sun dipped behind the ridges. We lingered there, knees close on the step, the silence wrapping around us like fog rolling in from the valley. My body hummed with it, the unspoken pull tightening like a cinch strap on a saddle. I stood first, brushing off my jeans. "Dinner," I said, voice rough from the quiet. "Nothing fancy." Inside, the kitchen warmed under the stove's glow. I lit candles, stubby ones from the drawer, their flames dancing shadows across the walls. No need for overhead light. The flicker suited the mood, soft as the confessions starting to surface. We ate simple. Stew simmered from garden carrots and herbs, bread torn by hand. Plates scraped close on the table, our elbows nearly touching in the tight space. She spooned stew slow, eyes on the candle. "This reminds me of my grandma's place," she started, voice low. "Out in the panhandle, where the wind never quits. She'd tell stories at night like this, about losing the farm to drought, but finding ways to hold on. Her words peeled back layers, rural anecdotes laced with the ache of it. I listened, fork paused, feeling the echo in my own bones. I set my plate aside, the steam fading. "Holding on's what we do," I said, but my mind drifted melancholic, to losses carved deep in this town. The friend I'd loved quiet years back, her leaving after whispers turned to stares, church ladies clucking, jobs slipping away. Small town weight, pressing desires into dust. "Lost someone once," I murmured, gaze on the flame. "Here, where everything shows if you look close. Learned to carry it alone." Her hand reached across the table then, fingers brushing mine, warm against the cooling wood. "I came for more than shelter," she confessed, eyes unflinching in the low light. "The move, the crunch, it's real. But you, from that first knock, something pulled." The admission hung, raw as exposed roots after rain. My pulse thudded, the candle's heat mirroring the flush rising in my chest. We cleared the table together, plates stacking in the sink, bodies moving in the narrow aisle. Tension built, accidental closeness in every turn, her hip grazing mine as we rinsed, water running steady. Back on the porch, night full now, stars pricking the black sky. We sat side by side on the swing, the chains creaking soft. Her shoulder pressed to mine, deliberate this time, the wood groaning under our weight. Empathy swelled between us, shared fear of judgment from nosy locals, Mrs. Hale's truck idling too long at the road, eyes scanning for anything off. "I should go," I said, standing abrupt, the pull too strong, vulnerability cracking wide. Fear clutched like barbed wire, the town's gaze a shadow over every touch. But she rose too, gentle hand on my arm, persistent, soft as wind through grass. "Not yet," she whispered, thumb tracing my wrist. "We face it together, like the storm." The night deepened, boundaries blurring in the dark, her breath close, my resistance thawing like frost under morning sun. We stood there, porch light off, the world narrowing to the space between us, pulling us further in. Morning broke clear, the sky a hard blue after the night's blur. Lena stirred eggs in the pan, her back to me as I laced my boots by the door. "Market run today?" she asked, plating the food simple, yolks runny like the day's unformed plans. I nodded, the routine pulling us out. Supplies low, and her place still needed basics after the move. We loaded the truck, her sitting close on the bench seat, the cab tight with the scent of coffee and damp earth from our clothes. The drive to town wound through scrub hills, gravel crunching under tires, but my mind raced ahead, testing the edges of this nearness in public light. The market buzzed low-key, stalls lined under awnings with fresh produce and jars of preserves. Folks nodded as we walked, baskets in hand. Old-timers in hats, women from the co-op eyeing the crowd. Discretion came natural out here. No hands linked, just shared glances over carrots, her shoulder brushing mine in the press of bodies. But eyes caught. Mrs. Hale at the honey stand, her gaze lingering, sharp as she weighed a jar. "New face," she said to me, voice carrying. "Staying close, I see." Lena picked apples steady, but I felt the test in it, the town's pulse quickening around strangers forced near by the crunch. Whispers of another eviction wave rippled through the lines, families scrambling for scraps of land, roofs over heads that might not hold. A rumor hit then, sharp as a gust. Overheard at the bread stall, the Ramirez place facing auction if payments slicked. Lena's landlord circling tighter, no mercy in the scarcity. It sparked something protective in me, a knot in my gut like wire pulled taut. I grabbed her arm light, steering us away from the cluster. "We handle this," I muttered, voice low under the chatter. Her eyes met mine, grateful but edged, the instinct pulling me deeper into her orbit, away from my solitary drift. The drive home stretched the tension, windows down, wind whipping through the cab. Clouds gathered sudden, dark as doubt. "That back there," she said quiet, hand on the dash as the road bumped. "The looks. You feel it too, the pull, right? Not just the storm or the oil." Confrontation came hushed, her words cutting the roar of air. My knuckles whitened on the wheel, attraction laid bare like exposed roots. "Yeah," I admitted, eyes on the horizon. "But it's risky. Town sees what it wants." The wind rattled the windows then, a physical storm mirroring the chaos inside. Gusts buffeting the truck, shaking the frame like my resolve. I tried retreat when we pulled in, unloading crates fast, aiming for Solitude's shield. "Head to your place now," I said, stacking bags on the porch, voice clipped to push the boundary. The house loomed safe behind me, door ajar like an escape. But she set her load down slow, stepping close, raw honesty in her stance. "Can't. Not with that auction hanging. And not without saying it, I've wanted this since the knock. You in the quiet." Her voice cracked the air, pulling me back. The failed pull into alone leaving me rooted, drawn by the truth in her unflinching gaze. We stood there, crates forgotten, as thunder grumbled distant. Hushed words followed, revelations spilling like rain starting to patter. Mutual desires hidden under routines. Queer wants coded in glances across fences, safe only in shadows. "I've buried mine too," she whispered, hand finding mine brief, warm against the cooling wind. "But together, maybe we don't have to." The admission hung, heavy as the clouds closing in, transitioning us toward evening's pivotal edge, where confessions waited to break free. Evening fell thick, the sky churning gray as we stepped inside from the porch, crates still scattered like unfinished thoughts. Thunder rumbled low, distant but building, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth rising early. Lena's hand slipped from mine as we crossed the threshold, but the warmth lingered, pulling me toward the kitchen where supper waited half prepped. We moved through it quiet, chopping vegetables side by side, knives thudding against boards in rhythm with the growing wind. The space felt tighter now, walls pressing in like the storm outside, every glance between us charged, Unspoken words stacking like storm clouds. I set plates down, but appetite faded under the weight. "Bedroom's this way," I said finally, voice rough, leading her down the short hall. The room was spare, a double bed against the far wall, quilt pulled taut, a single lamp casting warm glow over the dresser scarred from years. No pretense. The house's confines left no room for it. She followed, door clicking shut behind us, the sound sharp as a latch on a gate. Thunder cracked closer, shaking the panes, and the world narrowed to this space, her presence filling it like heat from a clothes fire. We stood facing each other, the bed between us, a line I couldn't cross yet. This, us, it's more than the crunch or the storm, she said, stepping forward, her eyes unflinching in the dim. Confrontation built slow, intense in the small room, her words peeling back the last layers I'd clung to. My back hit the dresser, hands gripping the edge, heart thudding against ribs like hail on tin. Vulnerability surged, fear of it all, the town's eyes, the scarcity forcing us here, the desires I'd buried deep as fence posts. "What if it breaks us open?" I whispered, voice cracking with the thunder. "Out here, being seen means losing ground." She closed the gap, hands finding my arms, clutched tight, grounding me as lightning flashed white through the curtains. My muscles went taut, every nerve alive, then releasing under her touch, the tension uncoiling like wire cut loose. Sensory rush hit hard, her breath warm on my neck, fingers pressing into skin, the faint callus from her palms rough against my sleeves. Thunder rolled again, masking the hitch in my breath, but nothing hid the pull now. Bodies drawn close in the storm's roar. "Safety's in choosing this," she murmured, voice steady amid the chaos. Reassurance wrapping around my fears like a firm grip on reins. "Queer out here means codes, shadows. But with you, I see a way through. No hiding forever." Her words met mine head on, committed, easing the knot in my chest. I searched her face, the lines softened by lamplight, and the admission broke free. "I want this too," I said, deeper feelings spilling raw. "You, staying. Not just for oil or storm. All of it. Despite the risk." Our hands clutched tighter, pulling until no space remained. The first unguarded embrace crashing over us like the downpour starting outside. Her arms wrapped solid, body fitting against mine, taut lines melting into shared warmth. Emotional release flooded, tears pricking hot as thunder peaked, the room alive with it, rain lashing, hearts sinking in the hold. We stood there, unmoving, the storm's fury mirroring, then fading from our own. Calm settled after, thunder rolling distant, leaving us tangled on the bed's edge. Breath evened, her head on my shoulder, talk turned practical. Future plans whispered, housing hurdles we'd face together, the partnership taking shape in the quiet aftermath. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and gray, pulling us from the tangle of sheets. Lena stirred first, her arm still draped across my waist, warm weight grounded me in the quiet. I lay there a moment, breath syncing with hers, the storm's remnants dripping from the eaves outside. No rush to move. The world felt steadier now, like land settled after flood. We rose slow, feet padding to the kitchen, the house holding our new rhythm without protest. Coffee brewed strong, mugs passed hand to hand in the narrow space. "That auction rumor," she said, leaning against the counter, eyes on the steam rising. "Ramirez's place hangs by a thread. Landlord's calls came yesterday. Eviction if I don't scrape up double next month." Practical talk filled the air, housing laid bare like tools on a workbench. The crunch pressed real, families out here doubling up in trailers, sharing wells that ran dry. Shared life loomed then, her words turning to us. "We could pool it, your spare room, my pay from the co-op shifts, make this place hold two." I nodded, pulse steady, the idea fitting like a well-worn glove. No more solitary mugs, futures woven simple, roofs over heads we'd guard together. We stepped out after, air crisp with wet earth, tackling chores side by side. The yard needed clearing, branches down from the gale, scattered like broken fences. Rural pressures hit as we worked, joint strategy forming in the sweat. Gossip spreads fast, I said, hauling a limb to the pile, her following with an armful. Mrs. Hale's eyes miss nothing. One wrong glance at the market, and tongues wag. She set her load down, wiping her brow, unflinching gaze meeting mine. We code it then. Touches in the barn, not the road. Shared drives to town, backs to the wind. Laughter edged her words, dry as dust on the path, like smuggling secrets in plain sight. The plan solidified, barriers against prying, curtains drawn at dusk, whispers over fences, safety in the everyday veil. Bond deepened through the labor, building emotional fences together. We mended the gate next, wire stretched taut between posts, hammers thudding in time. Her hand steadied mine on the pliers, calluses rough, the press a quiet affirmation. Isolation's shift hit me then, reflection rising unbidden as we worked. I'd built walls high, days wrapped in alone to keep the hurt at bay, desires tucked like tools in a shed, out of reach. But partnership bloomed now, roots intertwining under soil I'd thought barren. Her presence constant, a steady ridge against my sky, turning solitude to something shared, alive. Subtle humor crept in as afternoon wore on, adapting to her everywhere. She bumped my hip, reaching for the rake, grinning sheepish. Tight quarters this half-acre. I'm like a calf in a stall, tripping over my own hooves. I chuckled low, the sound foreign but fitting, her laugh joining as we stacked wood. No more empty echoes. Her boots scuffed the porch, her scent lingered in the hall. It eased the old guards, humor lightening the weight of change, safety affirmed in the coded rural love. Her thumb brushing my wrist hidden by sleeves as we paused for water. This holds, she murmured, eyes on the horizon where hills met sky. Us. Quiet but sure, like the land after rain. The words wrapped, solid, queer existence out here, a path we'd walk veiled but true. Pressures bent but not broken. Evening drew near, chores done, and we turned toward town. Integration waiting, alliances quiet in the gathering dusk. Dusk painted the road in long shadows as we drove into town, the truck's engine humming steady between us. Lena's hand rested on the seat, inches from mine, a quiet code in the cab's confines. The market had closed, but the diner glowed warm, a hub for evening talk. We stepped in together, boots thudding on the plank floor, the air thick with grease and coffee. Heads turned, subtle. Old-timers at the counter, Mrs. Hale in her booth with a pie half-eaten. "Evening," I said to the waitress, voice even, sliding into a stool. Lena sat beside me, shoulders brushing light. Our dynamic tested in the open light. No overt touches, just the shared order of stew and rolls, her knee steady against mine under the counter's edge. Eyes lingered, but discretion held. Nods exchanged, talk of weather steering clear of the undercurrent. "New hands at the co-op?" one asked her, probing gentle. She answered calm, weaving in her shifts, the crunch mentioned casual as salt on potatoes. The test passed quiet, our nearness veiled in the diner's hum, pulling us tighter without a word. Back home, her integration wove into my world through the chores. Seamless now, like roots finding soil. Mornings started with her at the sink, scrubbing pans while I brewed coffee, the rhythm sinking without force. We'd head to the garden together, her hands in the dirt beside mine, pulling carrots that had deepened in the weeks. "These hold steady," she said one afternoon, brushing soil from a bunch, her fingers grazing my wrist, hidden by the plants. Shared labor built it, fence checks turning to walks along the ridge, her laughter low when a post wobbled under our weight. The landscape mirrored our connection then, steady ridges rising unyielding against the sky, wind carving paths but not breaking the line. Like us, carved close by time and touch, solid under the vast quiet. Her presence filled the empty corners, boots by the door, her coat on the hook, turning the house from echo to anchor. The final scarcity hurdle loomed midweek, a call from her landlord cutting through the morning calm. "Auction set," he barked over the line, voice tinny from the receiver she held out. "Double rent or out." The crunch biting hard. No mercy in the town's squeeze. We stood in the kitchen, her face taut, and mutual support rose natural as breath. "We pay it," I said, hand on her shoulder, firm through the flannel. Pooled our checks, my garden sales, her co-op hours, scraping enough to wire over by noon. She hung up, exhaled long, and pulled me close, forehead to mine in the tight space. "Together," she murmured, the words sealing it, hurdle cleared like a gate swung wide. No more fragile roofs apart, our shared one held, scarcity bent by the bond we'd forged. Intimate moments affirmed the long term then, scattered through the days like stars pricking night. Evenings on the porch, her head on my shoulder as the ridges faded dark, fingers laced hidden in the fold of a blanket. One night, rain pattering soft, we lay in the bed's warmth, bodies fitting close, her breath steady against my neck. "This is home now," she whispered, hand tracing my arm slow, commitment etched in the touch. No rush, just the quiet promise. Desires met in the safe confines, queer and rooted deep. The emotional arc closed gentle. From that first Knox disruption, oil jar in hand, shattering my reserved walls, to this chosen home we'd built, side by side. Isolation thawed to partnership. The pull no longer feared, but claimed. Steady as the land underfoot, town waited beyond. Integration deepening in quiet alliances, pulling us forward into the broader weave. Pound pulled us in gradual, alliances forming quiet as roots under sod. We drove to the co-op one crisp morning, Lena's hand light on the gear shift, veiled from the road. Inside, the air hummed with chatter, forklifts beeping, crates thudding against docks. Old Man Jenkins nodded from his post, eyes crinkling at her. "Heard you're sticking," he said, handing her a ledger. No probe, just the subtle shift. Her shifts extended, my garden haul bartered in, our names linked on the roster without fanfare. Whispers faded into the grind, scarcity's grip easing as we pooled for her rent. The Ramirez place secured joint now, papers signed in the lawyer's dim office. Back home, intimacy sustained in daily rhythms, bodies syncing like seasons turning. Mornings, her fingers traced my spine under the quilt, breath warm against my shoulder, the bed's sag a familiar cradle. Afternoons blurred in the yard, her hoeing beside mine, sweat mixing in the sun, touches coded in the bend of backs, the pass of a water jug. Evenings on the porch, ridges glowing amber. We'd sit, knees touching, her thumb circling my palm hidden in shadow. Queer rural life held its tensions, locked doors at night, hushed calls to far friends. But resilience bloomed in the everyday, our existence a quiet defiance, desires met in the safe hollows of home. Housing resolved solid mid-fall. Landlords call a grunt of approval, double paid from our combined checks. No more auctions looming, the half-acre stretched to hold us both, spare room turned study with her books stacked neat. Culminating one dusk, we stood at the fence line, hands clasped, brief over the wire, her eyes meeting mine unflinching. "This is us," she murmured, voice steady as the posts we'd mended. Partnership strength lay in that quiet hold, isolation long thawed, the land bearing witness to our chosen weave. Shared silence wrapped the porch like dusk's first chill, her hand in mine a steady anchor. If you felt that pull, turn to home in unexpected places, share your story below. Subscribe for more tales of quiet connections in the rural wild.